Hello and welcome back to another edition of the NCCR podcast. Yes, I'm just the voice today, but let me introduce you to your host. One hails from straight out of Tacoma to Compton, from the mean streets of Hilltop. She's the hot, feisty one. Give it up for Miss Kimmy Kim Matson. The other one hails from the great city, parts unknown, Washington, better known as Redmond. She's a city slicker. She's cool. She's calm like the other side of a pillow. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Amanda Sykesick.
I mean, literally every week it's a lot. It's just so much to take in and live up to.
I love it. Everybody needs a hype man.
A hype man.
How you
I'm
ladies
start
doing today?
taking Devandis to the grocery store with me.
And here on Aisle 19.
Oh my gosh,
She's
Picking
choosing a
up
box of
eggs.
pasta.
yes. Let's make that segment happen.
No one pick veggies just like Amanda.
Wow.
They're sweet, they're juicy, and they're delicious.
It just goes on and on.
Okay, all right.
So good. So good.
Ladies, how was your weekend?
Good.
Good. Busy. Good.
Yeah.
It's good. Got stuff done.
Yeah.
It's always good.
Fall
Still have
is
a little-
here. Seahawks
concrete-
won.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mariners won.
Sorry about those Steelers.
Yeah. Well,
To
not
the
too
three in our
sorry.
church.
Yeah.
Not that sorry,
Yeah.
but
Try to set off a whole section. We're not having it. Blitz made his
oh yeah,
debut.
Blitz was in. How tall was Blitz? About
Like
12?
7 feet. Yeah.
He felt bigger.
He does feel bigger.
He was quite an imposing presence
That's right.
as a
That's
greeter
right.
on Sunday. If you missed that, too bad.
Yeah.
Should have been here to see it.
Should have been here. You know, this all ties into our opening. Friends, how many of us have them? And what the world
Oh, boy.
needs now is love, sweet love.
Our heads are going the wrong direction.
I know. We're not coordinated
We're not-
at all.
We're not in sync.
But hey, Pastor, I love his opening salvo, but I'll let you ladies talk about that.
Well, he did start. Yes, generally the sermon was about building friendships and how we're called to love one another. But Steve began with addressing, I think, something that we probably all think about most days if you're on social media at all or have a conversation with somebody over the age of 20. And it was the divisiveness that we all are surrounded with in our country, even in our church. And he related, and again, I don't want to offend because everybody can be offended in equal portion when we talk about some of these things, but he likened the MAGA movement to one that was similarly being participated in back in the olden days, Make Israel Great Again. And there were, I guess to point out is things don't change. People have opinions. They feel free to share opinions. They want other people to embrace their opinions. But what's different now is that we know about it immediately. You used to have a conversation with a person, and that seemed to be a little more user-friendly than what happens now with just anonymous posting on social media sites and the whatnot. But back in Israel, back in the day, the Sadducees chose politics to try to argue their point. The Pharisees went with rules, tried to impose their rules on everybody. The Zealots turned to militia or overtaking through power of some sort. And then the Essenes were the passive, I'm just going to pretend this isn't happening, go hide under a rock somewhere. and not be involved. And I guess what Steve was trying to get us to think about was how, as a church, we respond to these different modes of communication and where we're supposed to leave those, which is at the door, because church is a place where love should be nurtured and grown. And yes, we can all have a different point of view, and we do. We don't have to agree, but resorting to any one of these other modes of trying to prove our point is just not what we're supposed to be about. And then it led me to think about a question, and then just, then I'll be done. Do you find yourself in falling into any one of those categories of the Make Israel Great Again factions? Just food for thought, something to chew on. Then we can move on now to something a little more lighthearted. Building friendships.
But is it lighthearted? I think that there are quite a few people that come to church and they're lonely, right?
Mm-hmm.
They aren't getting involved for whatever reason. They're introvert. They don't think they have time. They are hurt, and it's easier to just stay closed off.
So to be in the Essenes portion of
Yeah.
life, maybe
Maybe.
hiding out, being a little too introverted to do a thing.
And you know what, Steve alluded to this. We have this little device now. We have all this technology, but people are more lonelier now.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all the group chats, Facebook, and all these
Yeah.
imaginary friends, people are just lonely.
Yeah.
Well, you had that stat that having one close friend is the same as having no close friends, basically.
Right.
Crazy, ain't
Having
it?
several friends doesn't really move the needle much.
Mhm.
But when you're having several connections with, again, we'll use church as the example, where you're plugging into things where those things can develop into deeper relationship and connection, that starts to change
Yeah.
how your isolation and your feelings of loneliness. None of these things have to be done immediately all at once. These are processes that folks go through, and part of that consistency with that helps that closeness begin to build. And then when you're vulnerable in those situations, as you feel comfortable, that's where trust starts to come in. And he did mention too, the flip side of that is some people have been there, done that in other churches or avenues in their life, and they get burned, so they just stop. It's a one and done kind of vibe. But I think his encouragement for us, particularly here, is to help recognize those folks that might be on the fringe.
Yeah.
And even if you're an introvert, invite them in.
Mm-hmm.
Again, doesn't have to be a huge thing, but
Well, I think, we don't need more churches where it's okay to be alone.
right.
We need churches where there are real and authentic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a difference between being included and being embraced, or being invited and being welcomed. And I hear a lot from people that come in our church, like, this is the first time I felt seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sad reality, right?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
yikes.
It is.
Yeah.
Because I think there's just, that'll be, somebody else will greet that person. Somebody else will say, hey, sit next to me, or introduce themselves before church starts. And
Yeah.
it doesn't take much to give somebody that sense of feeling like they've been seen.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I just think that it's interesting watching people, because I feel like there are people that come to church to be an audience, right? They come to the church, they are here to receive something and then go home. And we are trying to be a fellowship. And that means that we are here with one another. We're building each other up. We're bearing each other's burdens. We're praying for each other. We're serving each other. We're loving each other. And that looks vastly different
Yep.
than being an audience member.
Well, and that happens in large part due to our small groups, which, we do talk about a lot. But as far as building those closer connections, that's how we do it here. And there's always an opportunity to join one, to find out more about those, and even if you're curious, go to one or two. If they don't fit, go to another one. Go to just keep trying until you find your spot. But another encouragement from Steve is to just get involved and again, just try it out.
Right. And the thing is that we're all busy.
Yeah.
We all have our things, whether we're introverted or, whatever. But you make time for what's important.
Right.
Yes,
And you figure it out. And Steve talked about, if you need to put it on your calendar or you're going to have to put in effort, right?
Right. Well, it's spending time in the Word. It's just personally, it's communicating with God. It's the things that you do make time for. And our life group meets once a week. It's always on the same night. It's always at the same time. So there's consistency there. And when, people show up week after week after week, and that's how you get to know somebody on a deeper level, and that vulnerability, that authenticity, it starts to shine through. And that was another thing, a question why don't you do that? Why aren't you involved? Why do you feel nervous about that, or uncomfortable or fearful about that? And I think it's people fear maybe there's going to be judgment.
Right.
And if they really expose who they are, then folks might not.
The reality
like them
is
so
we're
much.
all in the same boat.
We are.
And
We all
what you
got a
think of
thing.
somebody might not necessarily be the case, right?
I think people
We're
are
all
harder on
broken.
themselves.
Yeah, we're all broken.
You're your own worst enemy sometimes when it comes to how bad was the thing I did, or that happened to me, or that kind of stuff. And I think when you start talking to people, a lot of people have a similar experience, or something that's relatable anyway.
Yeah. We're not meant to stand alone. And I was telling you guys earlier, a few years ago, we did a road trip to the Redwood Forest. And something I learned while I was there, when you're looking at these huge, beautiful trees, and that they're huge and old, but you think their roots are going to be super deep, but they're actually not that deep. They mostly grow out and they start to intertwine with the other tree's roots. And it's like this whole support system. And they're interconnected with the other trees. They rely on each other, right? And they withstand a lot. You think of like weather, fire, pests, whatever. And it just made me think of that as followers, right? When you're in isolation, it does not make you stronger. It actually makes you weaker. And you need a support system, just whether it's in your everyday life or through the storms. Steve talks about 2 a.m. friends. I've also heard it referred to as like a mountaintop and a valley friend, like who's cheering you on at the mountaintop and who's on their knees praying with you and crying with you in the valley, right? And so I just think it's really important as a church that we realize that we're stronger standing in this together. We're rooted in our faith. We're called to unity, and we are one family in Christ, right?
Your analogy of the sequoia tree,
Yeah,
right?
that's cool.
In the roots. When you go into the redwoods and you see these trees, they're not just only redwoods.
Yeah.
Right? There's other species of trees, right? But the sequoia is still reaching out and gathering strength with other trees.
Yes.
That's not like them or the same species of them. The same thing can be said with friends, you know. And I think we fall into a silo where we're only going to talk to people that look like us, think like us, versus expanding and connecting
Yeah.
with others, building that solid friendship and
Right.
foundation, you know.
Well, I've heard this said before, like some relationships you're discipling with and some relationships you're discipling to, and that can change
Yeah.
at any point.
Yeah.
But how are people going to see how you live your life and see Jesus reflected in you if they aren't a part of it? Right.
Right.
And so I think that's important. The other thing I wanted to talk about really, or just say, is I was listening to this podcast recently, and the pastor was talking about how in the United States specifically, we've lost hospitality, right? Like it isn't a thing that you hear of a lot.
It's an old-fashioned word, maybe.
Right. And so they had some friends and they went to a restaurant, and as they were being seated, they walked past this Asian family and they were speaking, I think you said Mandarin or something. And their friend that was with them speaks it fluently. And so he went over and was talking to them. And like within 4 or 5 minutes, this Asian family that they had just met, who literally were like several months into living in the United States, invited them over for dinner. And like he was like, I've known people like 7 years and I've never been to their house, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's okay to take a chance and invite people over, right? If you don't want them over to your house, invite them out to coffee or whatever. But nobody cares what your house looks like.
Well,
Nobody
again,
cares.
It's so small. It's making the attempt, the gesture, the movement toward that matters. It's not the venue. It's how you approach, and if you do it with the right heart space, you know. And I wanted to touch too on, unless you guys have some other stuff, I'll kind of start to wrap up.
Well, I was just going to read Romans 12:9 really quick.
Okay.
I think it's just a good reminder. And this is Amplified. Shout out to our good friend who loves Amplified.
Yikes.
Love is to be sincere and active, the real thing, without guile and hypocrisy. Hate what is evil, detest all ungodliness, do not tolerate wickedness, hold on tightly to what is good, be devoted to one another with authentic brotherly affection as members of one family. Give preference to one another in honor, never lagging behind in diligence, aglow in the spirit, enthusiastically serving the Lord. I just was like, let's hang on to that this week.
Mm-hmm. Do that this week.
Let's hang on to that this week.
Yep.
My question is, are you living in grace, you and God? And are you living with grace? Because if it's been extended to you, you need to start extending it to others. So kind of a twofold question. And then I saw this popped up on my phone this morning. So I thought I'd share it kind of in the vein of how we started the podcast and how Steve started the sermon yesterday. Forgive them even if they aren't sorry. Let them be right if that's what they need. Send them love and then send them off. Don't tie yourself to small-mindedness. It will steal your well-being.
And with that, mic drop. And we're going to close it out. Be friends, make a friend, and love godly. Till next week, we are